So for me, Alien 3 was the first Aliens movie I ever saw, and I overall actually rather like it, especially because my favorite Alien movie is the first one, which means that every single Alien movie has been worse than the one before, which means that this is still fairly early in that chain.
Right.
And while the theatrical cut, I think, is not particularly good, the assembly cut's actually pretty strong. And what I was saying before you got back was that there was so much production hell in terms of getting this movie made. The fact that it is a movie full stop is like kind of amazing.
Welcome to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Another Pass podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Sam Alisea.
Hello.
And today we are discussing a movie that is a troubled and probably a movie that it has been too long coming to be a part of this series, but it is a testament of female empowerment. And for that discussion, we have brought the absolute phenom, the total top boss, the head bitch in charge, my friend and comedian, Erin Callahan.
Hi, thanks for having me. You added a whole bunch of tags there. I really liked that.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, I mean, the goal is to just keep adding stuff to it.
Absolutely. Get a full 5 minutes, just tags.
Yeah, go with that like real Grecian hero kind of thing where we just keep on adding additional epithets so that the people, when they're trying to remember it down the line thousands of years from now, it's like Erin Callahan, head bitch in charge, yes.
Hell yeah.
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 I mean, when you have the total package on, you really want to sell it. That's really what you want to do.
See, my strategy, a lot of people don't employ this strategy, but I really like to be oversold right at the top. And then that just paves the way for like inevitable disappointment from there on out.
But that's comedy gold. I mean, that's
exactly.
where the
it.
funny is.
You get it. Yeah. You get it.
And, I mean, that is fitting for the movie that we're talking about today, because today we are discussing a movie that fell off a bit of a cliff of two strong entries into its franchise, because today we are talking about Alien 3.
Woo!
Huzzah.
Yeah.
I'm so enthusiastic.
All right, so let's start off with this one. Sam, why don't you tell the audience about how you had never seen these movies before we subjected you to it this weekend?
So listeners, you know that I don't like horror movies because I've said it a couple of times, many times. Every time someone brings something that is scary, I'm like, I'm a coward. And I own that. I mean, like, know what you are and then accept it. And, you're going to be better for it. And I had only seen Alien ever in my life because my mom really, really wanted me to because she loves monster movies. And I've also discussed that on this podcast. And that was a really good movie. But it scared the crap out of me. And I asked Case if I could skip Aliens, which is the second film, for those of you who are lucky enough not to know. And and he was like, no, this Aliens 3 really like feeds right into it. You kinda have to watch it. And I was like, fuck. So I watched Aliens last night. And I watched Alien 3 this morning. And honestly, that was really rough. That was possibly rougher than how scared I was when my neighbor upstairs dropped something on the floor and I jumped 10 feet last night while watching Aliens.
Oh, no.
So, I'm going to have some feelings. Because this is a worse movie that we're discussing.
Oh, yeah.
Than Aliens.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, did you feel, because I feel like at least Alien out of the three is by far the scariest movie. I mean, like that's
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only one I would characterize as like a horror movie.
Yeah. I actually really, once I got into, I don't like feelings of isolation. So there's still like moments in Aliens where they do feel very isolated and cut off. I don't like waiting for the evil to come to me. This is a big problem. This is why I don't like zombie movies either. It's all about waiting for doom to find you. And I don't like that. I hate that. I don't. So
Can I just guess that the scene you hated the most was the motion tracker scene in Aliens where they're approaching and it's like, wait, they should be in the room now. What's going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. 1000%. There's a lot of really beautiful, quiet moments in that film. And the sound editing in Aliens, not Aliens 3, in Aliens is so incredible because there are deliberate choices to place no sound, not even footsteps.
Mm-hmm.
There are deliberate moments to then start adding slowly, like just the sound of beeping or something like that. And it builds tension in a way that is really lovely, even though this is an action film. Alien is definitely more scary, and just the ending kind of makes you feel, I mean, I wouldn't say cathartic because I want to associate that with something pleasant, but there is a feeling like you just went through that. Like you felt that experience with her. And I think with Aliens, because the ending feels a little happier, she escaped with more people.
Yeah, she's snuggling with her adopted daughter, her pseudo husband, and her robot friend.
I actually was like a huge like, oh, mommy, the mommy scene, that was so cute, you know. And it's also just like a very badass, you know, it's Ripley grabbing guns, and when people are sexually attracted to her, it's because she's so badass. And it is like overall not that scary and more enjoyable. There's just like lovely, there's some really good monster shots and some really great practical effects, and it turned into a mech anime towards the end, so I liked that.
It sure did.
So
yeah, that mech suit battle is pretty fun.
It's great. It ups that ante.
Totally. I don't know that it's aged that well in terms of like it being that it's kind of slow, but
oh yeah,
you know, but it's fun. It's super fun.
Yeah, and I mean, at least there's like setup and payoff, because we actually have at the beginning her like revealing that she knows how to pilot these things and using it for work purposes, which is so
totally
fun. I'm actually going to pause though and note, so I have watched the director's cut for all of these way more than I've watched the actual theatrical cuts, so there might be a chance where I will reference a scene that was not in the theatrical edition because I just forget which one's in which sometimes.
Sure.
I saw that there were director's cuts. And when my friend and I were discussing, I said, how much longer does that make each of them? And she told me, and I was like, yeah, not going to do it. Theatrical it is.
I knew there was, what do they call it? They don't call it a director's cut for Alien 3. They call it...
For Alien 3, it's called the assembly cut.
That's right, the assembly cut.
Because David Fincher refused to come back and have his name attached to anything further with this project.
That's right, yeah. So I've read that, and I've read that the assembly cut helps a lot justify some of the choices and transitions and stuff, but I haven't seen it, so I've only seen the theatrical one.
Gotcha. Erin, what is your association with the franchise? Man,
I guess I just really love horror movies, so I'm like on the total end of the spectrum as you, Sam. I love when they're like, this is going to sound so pretentious, but it's only slightly pretentious, I promise. I love when they're like about something horrifying about the human experience, right? Like not just like some random slasher, whatever, but like the horror of being, like you were saying, isolated in space, right? And no one can come to help you. So I've always loved Alien. It's just such a great movie. And then I don't think I had really seen Aliens or Alien. By the way, I think if you look at the printed title of the film, which we are discussing on this episode, I believe it's actually Alien to the Third Power.
Yeah, or Alien Cubed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Alien times Alien times Alien. But yeah, so I hadn't seen either of those, I think, actually until, I don't know, sometime in the last couple of years. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, for me, Alien 3 was actually my first exposure to this franchise. It was on TV when I was like way too young. I was like maybe 9 or 10, and
oh wow.
Like, this is the one that like traumatized me so much so that like I still have nightmares of the xenomorphs, and it's because of this movie.
God.
Like when I was so, let's get into some weird young shit here.
Yes.
So when I was a kid, I would have like recurring nightmares of like wolves chasing me down, and then once I saw this movie, it went from being wolves to being the xenomorphs.
Now, let me ask you, did the setting of your dreams change to reflect this change, or were you still like in the woods, or were you already on a spaceship with the wolves?
The setting did not change. I rarely was like in the woods being chased. Oftentimes it would be like through a house or something like that, and like me trying to escape.
Okay.
The freakiest one, and that one has actually remained Bears, which is being in some sort of weird maze-like floor plan, which then later, when I saw what the Colosseum floor plan looked like, because like there's the top layer, which is actually where they battle, but right beneath that is all this like interconnected like web of stuff. I was like, holy shit, that looks just like my weird nightmares from when I was 4. Like,
that's awesome.
yeah, weird brain.
I mean,
shit
it's
there.
not for you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but some people have like dreams that are like related to like bugs or to intruders or to being strangled. Mine is always like I'm running from a thing, and like the alien certainly fits that like archetypal fear right there. So like when I saw this movie, and sure, it was a TV edit, so it's a little less bloody and all that, but like I was, I had an active enough imagination to be like, oh, so they're dead. So like it was a pretty terrible murder. Like honestly, seeing less of it probably made it worse. And the theatrical cut already had like a lot of like off-screen deaths anyway. So like it's not like that changed that much. So I was terrified of this movie when I was little. Later, I finally saw it. I shouldn't say I finally, because this was like when I was like 12 is like when the cycle of like Aliens being on like TNT and USA all the time on like Saturday afternoons started popping up. And so I saw that movie a lot. And it's an action movie where you're like, oh yeah, they're empowered to sort of compete against these things. And that's pretty cool.
Right.
And I was like a little bit later, I finally saw Alien and I was like, oh shit, that's a really well done version of all this. It's still terrifying. Oh my God, I'm scared.
Yeah, and I mean, and the acting is so good in that one too. I mean, the cast is just like, Ian Holm and John Hurt. Like, I mean, it's so good.
Well, the casts have generally been pretty strong for all these movies. Like, I forgot / I just didn't realize who he was when I watched this movie. Charles Dance is a major character in this movie, and he is fucking delightful.
And he doesn't play a villain, which is not the most typical for him. He's lovely in this movie.
This is a Charles Dance who fucks. It's great.
Yes, exactly.
We also get Paul McGann, so we have goddamn Doctor Who out there. Like, wonderful stuff.
We have Pete Postlethwaite, except that we don't get a line from him until an hour into the movie, which is a tragedy to me. If anybody doesn't know who he is, one of his more famous things was in Usual Suspects. He's the lawyer. Kobayashi.
He is that guy actor. Like, if you see his face, you'll be like, oh shit, I know him from something.
Totally. But he's like a phenomenal actor, or he was. But there's a ton of really legit English actors in this movie who, if you're like a theater nerd or like a British TV nerd like I am, you're like, oh shit, like it's the husband from Mike Leigh's Vera Drake, or oh shit, it's the vicar's boyfriend from The Vicar of Dibley. And they just are all, they're all kind of underused.
Yeah. And part of the problem is like many of the production choices that they made for this movie that cause everything to look very homogeneous, which is going to make it difficult to make any of these characters really stand out, which we'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, this movie was my introduction to the Alien franchise. And the Alien franchise I just generally enjoy, especially once... so I took a heroic literature class in high school, my senior year, and we did all this time spent on Beowulf. And at one point we started talking about the Alien movies and how they actually perfectly mirror the Beowulf like epic.
Whoa.
And from that point on, I have never been able to shut up about this thing, as listeners of Another Past knows.
But wait, I'm so sorry to go on a tangent, but like, doesn't Beowulf go... Oh wait, no, Grendel attacks them first. Attacks the mead hall first.
Yeah, so here's how it actually works out pretty well. And this is why Alien 3, no matter any of the faults that it has, remains like a film with like a sequence of events that I'm fairly chill with. So Beowulf opens with a cry from the wilderness where people on the outskirts are being attacked by Grendel in the night. So this matches up with the first Alien movie where they have a distress call and they find the space jockey and all the eggs. And then in their ship, which looks like this massive fortress that has no walls, they are then beset by this creature who is birthed from Cain, just like Grendel is supposed to be the son of Cain.
Whoa, shit.
The second movie is about the alien queen and her offspring, just like how in the second chunk of Beowulf, Unferth hands over to Beowulf his sword, and it is very similar to a sequence that Hicks has with Ripley, where he explains how to use the rifle and all of the different sequences of like their firearms and so forth to protect her into this fight, where again, they then go off and they face the queen of the aliens, like the mother of the aliens. And then in this movie, two important things are going on here. Well, actually three. So first up, so there's the time jump between the mother and the dragon, and so Beowulf is old, everything is terrible. Epic poetry has this theme of everything being worse now than it used to be. And so this movie, having it being she's the sole survivor, everything's gone pretty to shit, she's on this terrible like prison planet and the company is coming for her. It works with that sort of like time jump right there. But in this movie, they refer to the alien as the dragon because it is this terrifying fire beast that just sort of emerges and kills them. And the way that Beowulf dies at the end of Beowulf is that he has been poisoned by the dragon, and so dies after killing the dragon. And in this case, she kills the alien and then gives up her life so that the baby doesn't get born, depending on which cut you're looking at. And it functions the same way as that she's been poisoned. So she has a ticking clock this whole movie. So it matches up perfectly. And I haven't been able to find anyone to be like, oh yeah, that's what we were trying to do. But the fucking alien is credited as the dragon in this movie.
Oh, for real?
So,
I didn't know. That's cool.
So like, I think it's intentional. And if it's not, it is the craziest synchronicity possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish that you all could see what Case's face looks like, especially when he's talking about Beowulf compared to other things.
I know, because also we just did Predator, which also looks a lot like Beowulf, but only the first chunk of the saga. Yeah, sorry, this is just a nerd area, and that is the reason why I am super here for the depressing third act of this story. That Ripley has been poisoned and that like it's not going to have a happy ending. And I'm fine with that because I'm looking at it from this sort of meta perspective of it being a sci-fi retelling of a classic work of Old English literature. And that's just my personal bent. And I understand that audiences going into theaters weren't seeing it that way. Probably a lot of them would say, Case, you're crazy. And in fact, probably most of them would say, Case, you're crazy. So I get it.
Well, I feel like that's the least of my issues. I don't have an issue with her death at the end. I don't have an issue with the tone of it. I'm like, it's a fucking biological death switch that could be unleashed on all of humanity, and you know, it's dark. It's not like I'm okay with it not being a 100% happy ending. And then also, you know, they give her that really nice Christ imagery of the arms out when she's falling.
Yeah. I mean, the last half of this movie is not the problem, in my estimation. I mean, like the you know, trying to a good idea, right? So like I have definite feelings about this movie, but it is a great idea to have this third act be in a space where there are no weapons. Because ultimately, in the first two movies, yes, there were weapons, but ultimately, how Ripley won was her wits in every single film. At the end of it, it always came down to how she could use the environment around her to eventually win the day over something that was much more powerful than her. And so placing the whole, you know, battle in a space where you actually have very little to give you an advantage and you just have to figure out what's around you, that's brilliant. That is something that this movie actually does that is like whether or not they execute it perfectly, that's a really interesting and great concept to do with something like this, especially coming off of Aliens and having massive gunfire everywhere and all of that stuff.
Oh, so especially in the director's cut.
Yeah. I didn't watch it. That was 30 minutes longer.
No, I know, but a solid 10 minutes of the 30 minutes longer for the director's cut of Aliens is they have these automated turrets that they set up that just literally the sequence is just like robot guns firing at aliens.
Yeah.
So, but which is smart, I guess. But what I'm saying is that part, like the last half of this movie works. The last half of this movie, like her sacrifice, the company coming in, someone thinking, not being naive and thinking that the company will surely be fine, you know, leading them right to her, kind of the maze running, the angles in that, all of that works. The problem with this movie is the first half of this movie. It is not good. It is not good. And I'm sorry, Case. I know you like it, but it is not good. The pacing is all over the place. There is no real character development. There is no way for. I felt when people were dying towards the end, I didn't feel true sorrow. I mean, like, was I sad about the dog? I mean, that was a monster thing to do. Yes, of course I was, because as far as I'm concerned, animals are just innocent until proven otherwise. They begin innocent. And, like, I don't want to watch a dog, explode with a monster inside of it. I don't want to do that. It's unpleasant. That aside, that's not what really pissed me off, because I kind of knew that was coming thanks to the internet. But that's not really what pissed me off. What pissed me off was just that I don't care about any of these humans. I really didn't.
Yeah, they don't really do anything to distinguish any of them from each other. And that's definitely the thing that kept striking me is, like, they make this big point of how they've found religion, right? But like none of them act like fundamentalists. And especially when they're threatened by this extreme existential threat, like, you'd be expecting them to have a much wider range of reactions, right? Some of them are just going to refuse to fight. They're going to pray. They're going to say, this is God's punishment for us or something. They all accept leadership really easily. And A, they're prisoners, and B, they're super hyped on God. So I just feel like that is a missed opportunity for distinguishing a lot of them from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also, like, in the beginning of this film, I was like, okay, it is sad that I guess we're not allowed to have families. It's sad she found a family in the last movie and then within the first 10 minutes, completely undone.
Yeah.
Like, nope, not gonna happen. And I get it. It's been a couple of years. Got to recast the little girl. That's really hard. Easier just to kill her off. Fine. I get it. We gotta make sure that Ripley is alone again. We gotta make sure to repeat the pattern again. We gotta make sure to put her in a facility with a bunch of men that are not gonna listen to her again. Like, honestly, this was hard because I had just watched Aliens and then watching this movie, and I was like, oh my God, another man not believing her. And it wasn't once, but it was twice in this movie, back to back, seemingly in the beginning. And I was just like, this is so frustrating because I just watched yesterday's movie and I just feel like I am being just beaten over the head.
Oh yeah, it'd be even worse if you'd also just rewatched Alien as well, because like all of this starts because Ripley is like, no, we're not breaking quarantine. They have to. We have to like make sure they're screened for any like weird shit because they've been exposed to an alien environment, and they're all like,
yeah.
We're not going to listen to you. We got to bring them back on board. And she's like, no, I am technically in charge. And they're like, we're not going to listen to you. And that's how all these movies start.
Yep.
Right. And so I get it. We got to keep the theme alive because it's a theme. And then was it fully necessary to keep the ever-present threat of sexual assault there for the whole, like, I was like, is this the best choice?
See,
like, and then my whole thing is then after that, I was like, okay, so they're really bad guys. They're really bad guys, but they don't seem like bad guys once we get to the second half of the film. Right? So like, if you're going to commit to like, these are hardened criminals, like the only thing is that over and over, they're like, we're rapers and killers of women.
Right.
Like, it's like they chant it at you and you're just supposed to believe it.
Yes.
And like, I understand, like I don't want to watch Ripley get raped. Like, that's not what I'm advocating for at all. In fact, like my whole thing was just like, this is already like one of the strongest characters ever written in terms of a female character. And now we're putting her in this situation. And I just felt like they kept playing on that. And I'm just like, is this a writer's fantasy to take away her power, to challenge her power? And I don't know, like that was just really weird for me. And I was like, is this necessary? Again, I just watched this morning and I'm having a lot of feelings because I did watch Aliens right before it. But I just felt like you could have still had the same thing, or you had to lean more into them being really bad.
Yeah.
I felt like they were a bunch of English actors.
Yes. Yeah, well,
I didn't feel like they were actually rapists.
Right. So I just rewatched this, and I was actually grateful that there wasn't more of a overt theme of
That, yeah.
impending sexual assault. There is that one scene, and they keep making reference, like you said, kind of verbally, to like, you shouldn't be walking around alone because, like, you're a woman. But I think to me it comes off less as like a writerly fantasy and more of like a weak attempt to keep reminding the audience of the circumstances because they, for whatever reason, were not able to put that into the characters. And again, I think that's another missed opportunity where like we could have had a stronger subplot of like a handful of the prisoners really actively plotting to kidnap Ripley and rape her or something, and then they're defeated somehow. But instead we just sort of get like lip service to that, and it's like you said, it's just sort of like, well, either commit to it or don't. But yeah,
I'm also fine with them being reformed,
right,
and not doing anything to her, but I would like to see cool things. Like, okay, so in Aliens 2, right, when you see Shepard and he does the cool knife thing, I want to know that these guys are cool on some level, even if it's like they've made something and they're beating the shit out of each other. Like, and then the pastor steps in, or whatever they called him, the head religious guy, to kind of keep the order and keep them in place and be like, see, they're dangerous. They're crazy. Like, there was no sense to me that they were just kind of annoying. And they weren't really like, there was no actual sense to me that they were dangerous, other than they kept saying like, oh, we're dangerous. And
right.
It also feeds into this thing that I dislike, where there's the belief that people cannot be reformed. And I'm like, there you can be reformed and go into the opposite realm too, right? You can like become a zealot in a different way.
Right.
And you don't have to continue to berate yourself for a crime that I'm not forgiving rapists. I want to say this. But what I'm saying is that it feeds into this like idea that these people who found, like, I kind of wanted her to push back when Dilton kind of said something like, because he was just like, we're rapists and murderers and da-da-da-da. And then he was like, but all are welcome here. But also, we can't have temptation. And I wanted her to kind of push back and just say something like, well, how do you know you're really reformed unless you face your temptation and overcome it? Or something,
right,
to the point of like, also just because I feel like that would have been pushed back enough to make them have a connection, I guess. I was just looking for her to have any kind of connection with someone that she was going to be fighting for her life with in this film. Because you get that in the other two films, and you care about the other characters in the other two films. And the first half of this film is just these guys going like, we're really bad, we are. Do, 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 do. And then just later on dying.
Yeah, and I feel like to that point, I feel like you do get a connection with her and Charles Dance, and not just because they bone, but because they're both, just really, really great actors. But then he gets smoked like so fast. So yeah to your point about, but I think like to your earlier point about, they're being reformed or not, it's like, I think part of what I was thinking about earlier is the fact that it's like the religion stuff, it just feels too easy for all of them. And it feels like something that we could be seeing them struggle with a lot more. Like I have to really use this. I have to really use prayer to like check myself. Like I really want to do this horrible thing, and I'm going to, flagellate myself or something so that I don't.
One of my notes when I was working on this was there's a lot of Name of the Rose energy going on here, and there's a lot of The Thing energy going on here. And the Name of the Rose stuff is like in that sort of monastic kind of characteristic, which if you look at the myriad drafts of scripts that came to this movie ultimately being created, the one that they were working with up until they did like the rewrites to make it a prison world and everything was going to be like a wooden space station that was like all filled with monks, and it was going to be this big visual treat of like crazy construction that got moved on because it would not be fiscally viable for this movie. But like we don't we keep the veneer, we keep the religious component, but we don't actually deal with like sort of the more hardcore elements outside of Dylan being the sort of like enforcer character for it all. Like the others don't really come off like that. I guess what is it, Gaelic, Paul McGann's character, who is the one who's sort of like is overwhelmed by the sight of the alien and sort of has like a religious experience with it, and that's more so in scenes that made it into the assembly cut, where to the point where he actually becomes almost sort of like an acolyte for the alien.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So when I say the assembly cut is way better, like no matter what, like that's just just a truth. Like that's a much better movie because all the shit that they had for characters, like any sort of character beats, is in that. And the theatrical cut, they removed all of it.
Good.
Like how they removed all the individuality of all the characters because they decided to have all the monks or all the prisoners, whatever, with shaved heads and wearing the same clothes.
Yeah.
And they're all just like look like generic white dudes with shaved heads and the exact same clothes talking about rape.
Are you saying white people all look alike?
Yeah, I kind of am.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, I don't disagree.
I mean, Sam, right now,
no comment.
Like looking at the two screens on Zoom, like, can you tell the two of us apart right now?
Twins.
I keep forgetting which one is me.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
twins. Absolute twins. It's just lucky for me that Zoom actually has your name on the bottom.
Yeah.
So I know who's talking because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting.
Yeah.
You know, I see Case's mouth move, and I'm like, I'm not talking right now. What's going on?
Hashtag white people problems.
Yeah. Of course, you're totally right that they don't distinguish them visually, which, you know, again, I don't think it would be an issue if they just distinguished them in terms of character wants and needs and circumstances, and, you know, which it sounds like they maybe do a little bit in the assembly cut, but
more so. It's still, you know, very similar looking characters. You know, you're gonna have a hard time telling who any of these actors are if you're not already super familiar with them, because they just don't have a visual tell beyond like this is their actual face. There's no spot for like makeup or hair or anything like that to like really accentuate any features.
Right. And a lot of them have very, very similar dialects too. Yeah. So,
and the movie is just brown. Like in contrast with the first two, this movie is just overwhelmingly brown, and that's kind of fine for the whole somber tone of the end of days kind of element that's going on with it. But it also kind of felt like how every PS2 game had this like brown shit color to hide all the bad special effects that they because it's the same thing just for movies. So it was 20 years earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
Like this is a movie that has not particularly good special effects that are very rushed.
Yes.
And like as a result, like they're trying to hide it by having everything just be earth tones.
Yes.
Absolutely. This is definitely one of those movies, not as bad as the Beowulf movie, but the CGI doesn't quite hold up. The effects don't quite hold up.
No.
So,
I also, it's funny that you mentioned PS2 because I actually really dislike the running through the hallways sequences in this. I just find them to be, they remind me of like a first person shooter game is why I was saying they remind me of like Doom, like really early, but then also kind of like music video, 90s music video stuff. There's a lot of like camera angles in this and stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, you direct music videos. Yeah.
That's going to be true because like we're fairly firmly in the complaining about the movie phase, but we will talk about some good stuff, and I do have some nice things to say about Fincher's cinematographic styling, but suffice it to say, he came on board like 5 weeks before they were filming. Like he had very little time to get this together. He was not supposed to be the director. That changed. The script was rewritten constantly to the point that this movie was supposed to be made as a sequel to a 1986 movie and came out in 1992. Because they just kept on doing fucking rewrites. And that's why you can't have the same actress play Newt, because she was supposed to be like 9, and by the time this movie came out, she was like 17. Like, it just isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And you can see it how that rushed production schedule influenced everything. Because like we're talking about the special effects, they changed the nature of the monster and redesigned it mid-production, and that's a big part of why they have all the CG for the alien, because they had to insert it after the fact because they were like, shit, we don't have it together yet. And unlike today, where you could have all your actors wearing clothes that they're not going to be wearing when they actually are on screen, like when you actually get to that point,
right?
Like Avengers Endgame, where they're like, we don't know what the costumes are going to look like yet. We just put them, we just shot the shot of them walking and fixed it in post.
Yeah.
This was not an era where you could do that. Like the CG is very bad. And I have to imagine that if they knew that that's what was going to happen in terms of like, we're going to have a CG monster, they would have lit it differently, because you would have tried to have more shadow. You would have tried to have things to keep the alien from being super visible.
Yeah, you can really see the edges on the.
Yeah.
Like it. I mean, it looks like a copy paste job, kind of like Photoshop, just like.
Like the alien was posting his vacation, but it was places that he wasn't. And here's me on that planet. Steve, I don't think you were actually there.
He didn't have the money, but he had already told all his friends that he was going to all these places.
It's like those people, the people on Instagram that would use like a toilet seat to pretend they had an airplane window behind them.
Well, it's like people using the Zoom backgrounds of like, you know, the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
Oh yeah, I love Zoom backgrounds.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because like I also feel like the practical effects are well, okay, I do wanna say in terms of like good things about this movie, that shot of her head against the wall and the alien, that is iconic. Like that's
my exact note. That is my exact note about that scene. It's possibly the best scene in this whole movie, or the best shot in this whole movie, and it's up there in terms of best shots in the Alien trilogy.
Absolutely.
Or the Alien franchise as a whole, but who really cares about the ones that came after this one?
Yeah, no, it's like unforgettable.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's one of the things that I think of as a person who never watched Alien, until today, Aliens 3. It's one of the things I think about when people bring up the Aliens franchise, even though I have not seen it. That is how popular that image is.
Yeah. And it's just, I mean, it's got so much going on, like the dripping stuff. And obviously we love the second mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming out like a stapler cartridge. And you're refilling staples. But yeah, it's like it's such a great shot. But it is weird that a lot of the other even practical effects are odd. Like there's a moment when Ripley like corners it in like a weird like cubby thing, and it's like fighting her, but all it's really doing is like waving its tail around, and it's just it's confusing, and it looks like they're trying to disguise how human the thing is, or like the person in the suit. Yeah,
so they pivoted a bunch when they actually got into production on this one. So originally, the quadrupedal animal that the alien came from was a cow, and so that the idea was that the alien was actually going to be very big, that it was going to be bigger than the ones that we had seen in the previous movies, and that's why it was going to be like an additional level of scary. And then early in production, they were like, this isn't quite working. They'd already shot the cow stuff, and that's how it made it into the assembly cut. But they're like, this isn't quite working. We're going to have a hard time really selling it with that build and everything. And so they decided to redesign the alien to be smaller and lighter so they could justify faster scenes. They decided to change it to being from a dog, which the note I sent to Sam was like, can you get over the gall that they would murder a dog as a way of creating their monster? But that
still
created
not over it.
Tons of new problems because they had to do a full redesign. And this is sort of why, if you watch the alien from shot to shot, its proportions change. Like sometimes it's like kind of small, sometimes it's pretty big. And it's also why there is hilarious footage that they didn't use of them dressing up. I think it's a whippet in an alien costume to try to have it actually like run around. And it is ridiculous looking.
That's
and it also
so
didn't
cute.
Work. Oh yeah, it's super cute when it. Like there's I was watching footage of them like fitting this dog's head with this like alien headpiece to then have it like run around. It's wild looking.
Oh, that's so great. But yeah, I mean that's a weird thing too, that like when it comes out of the dog, it gets so much bigger so fast. Like how it goes from being like dog-sized because it was contained within a dog. So, you know, couldn't have been bigger than a dog. And then it comes out and all of a sudden it's like 6 feet tall.
Yeah, which, you know, contrast that with the first Alien where we spent time with it smaller and it gets big pretty fast. But like we have times of them like kind of identifying it at different points as it continues to get larger and larger. It's a weird movie, and like they clearly were just trying to get a movie out there. I mean, David Fincher was brought on because having never done a movie, he had just been known for doing music videos and commercials, and they were like, this is a guy who will listen to what we say and will get everything out really quickly. Totally not actually what happened, which is why there's like a lot of fighting on set. Yeah.
But I mean, I have to, like, you gotta admire the balls on somebody who's a young director, who's never done a feature before, gets this job and is like decides to be a stickler about stuff, right? Like, wasn't he like really obsessed? I mean, he's just like always obsessed with how his blood looks. Not like his blood in his body, but you know what I mean.
Blood selfies all the time.
Yeah, just always checking. Yeah.
Excuse me, I need to donate blood, and then I need you to look at me to let me look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Like he apparently did like tons and tons of takes for certain like special effects scenes or just motions where it'd be like, oh no, that happened too fast and the camera didn't follow it properly. There were a lot of interesting things going on with how they lit it that probably also slowed down production on this one. Like it was apparently a smooth enough shoot at when Fincher was totally in control, but they kept on having to redo stuff. And like I said, just like rework how the monster looked and rework all this stuff. And then the studio was just like given tons of notes every day, and it was just a clusterfuck in general.
Ugh. Fun.
Sometimes it's those notes.
And I mean, it's a shame that we didn't get Michael Biehn back as Hicks. Like that would have been kind of fun. Apparently, early in the drafts, they were going to do this as 2 movies where the first movie, Ripley was going to be in a coma or possibly in a cryotube, and Hicks would be up and about and dealing with like a military program to weaponize the aliens. And so he would be the star of the 3rd movie, and then she would come back for the 4th movie. And when he was told that that wasn't going to be the deal, he was pretty pissed off about it and charged them a shitload just to use his picture so they could establish that the character was dead.
Whoa. Hell yeah, dude. Get the bag. Get that bag.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I kind of wish that they had worked it out and, like, gotten him in the movie instead, but I think they'd never even approached him about it at that point. So it was just like, yeah, can we... Because, like, he found out that they had created, like, a mannequin of his body for the autopsy scene that was, like, really close likeness-wise, and was fairly frustrated that they were using his image without consulting him.
Oh, yeah.
Which I get. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not clear necessarily on where that was in the process of, like, special effects team working on it, because they're not the lawyers who have to go talk to him. So
right,
like, did he just find out too soon and that shut down any conversation? I don't know, but it happened. It sucks that...
I mean, that would be a pretty terrible way to learn that you die, though.
Yeah, and he apparently was pretty upset because it was going to have an open chest, and either that was for the autopsy or it was going to be because of a chest burster, and he really rejected the idea of Hicks dying from an alien impregnation. I don't know. This is so many drafts earlier in the movie because they were going to be dead for pretty much halfway through the production cycle or the pre-production cycle. They were like, no, we can't deal with these characters. They're dead. And like, just didn't have them. And I understand Newt not coming back more easily. Like we said, you know, she's like 17. So like that makes sense unless you were going to have her like thawed out and like living on her own on the ship for a while before they land or something. I don't know.
Honestly, they probably could have done because she did pretty well living on her own anyway.
Yeah. True.
Like she was pretty savvy, so they could have done that, but it would have. I mean, I don't know.
And well, the other thing too is that I don't know how you all feel about jumping around. I mean, we've already jumped around a bit, I guess, but
let's talk about the movie right now.
Okay, so when Lance Henriksen comes in, who, God, I love him so much. When he supposedly the like prototype, the guy who created the bishops, right? When he comes in at the end of this movie, I don't remember, do we learn more about him in later films in the franchise? Because he looks the same age as all the, I mean, if he created the bishops, right, that would have been back
It's
a
real
ways.
confusing. Prometheus has an appearance by him theoretically as the founder, like the way, or maybe it's one of the Alien vs Predator. At some point, he shows up playing like Wayland of Wayland Yutani,
Okay.
and I don't think any of it makes any sense. So
Right. But I mean, it's not like we find out that like the one in this movie who's claiming he's human was actually also a cyborg or
so
whatever.
he bleeds, and in the
Right.
assembly cut, he actually holds out he holds his hand covered in blood to indicate that he's a real person and not a robot. But I imagine at the time of production that they thought that he was supposed to be the real Bishop, even though weirdly in the credits he's listed as Bishop 2 for that role.
Huh. Interesting.
Huh.
Yeah. But it's like he should look older then. Like he looks young as hell. Like, because she's been, and like, how long was she in stasis?
57 years.
Well, wait, no, that's 57 years between the first and the second movie. This one's like only like 2 or 3 years.
Right. So
Right.
from the first time we meet a bishop.
Right, which is only in number 2.
Right. Do we ever find out how long that is?
No, they don't. I don't know if they specify.
Most of the stuff I've seen indicate that it's only like 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Between 2 and 3, and that's only
Yeah.
travel time. Because her 57-year gap between the first and the second one, which also note the tech has advanced in that time, that's because
Right.
she was on a life vessel far
Right.
outside of normal space.
Well, okay, then the bishop in Aliens must have been hot off the fucking press because
He was a new
he
model.
looks the same.
That's true. He does like have a lot of
He
pride
did-
in that he's top of the line.
Yeah, he does say that he is a new model. He's very, very forward about that. And actually, in Aliens 3, he actually, when she kind of brings him back to life or reboots him so that she can find out what happened on the ship while she was sleeping, he eventually asks her to turn her off because there's no way he'll be top of the line ever again.
Yeah,
So, I mean, he's very,
that's true.
very conscious of the fact that, like, you know, at one point he was shiny and new.
Yeah.
There's a musical in there somewhere.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, can you imagine being a sapient, but also being part of a capitalist production cycle of planned obsolescence? Like,
I frequently feel that that's my reality. So
Are we not part of that?
Exactly.
Well, you know
what are
what?
you talking about?
this is as good a time as any to talk about how this movie doesn't rail against capitalism enough, because I feel like that's one of the main themes of the first two, and this movie doesn't. And that frustrates the hell out of me looking at it now as a much more lefty person than I used to be.
Well, it's interesting too because I feel like this movie tried to focus more on like a cult-like religion or organized religion, but they missed the mark on both, right? So they
Yeah.
were like wishy-washy on both. The corporation is still not like this corporation is still not a good thing. The company is still not a good thing. They're still coming for Ripley. She's still actively working against them, but they use what was in the last two movies to support that, right? Like, you know, because you watched
Right.
the last two movies, that this is a bad thing that's happening.
right.
And I kind of felt like they were trying to be like, okay, let's do like a secondary kind of theme because this is a third movie. But they fall so flat on that because they don't lean enough into the religious aspect of it and what that has done to this society and what it has done to these forgotten people that are still forgotten and discarded because of capitalism and because of their crimes. I think, like, again, when we get into pitches, we can go into stuff because I have some thoughts on that. But I feel like that's what happened. It just became really wishy-washy as they tried to introduce a new thing rather than just focus on the theme from before.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. They didn't commit to that shift enough if they were going to do it.
Yeah, because I think looking at this movie, the thing that really gets me is outside of a tone, we can say a vibe for this movie. There's like a very strong vibe for this movie.
Yes.
But it doesn't have a point of view. That's the problem. Fincher comes in so late in production. He has, like, while he does contribute rewrites and so forth, and they're doing a ton of work, I would say the strongest point about this movie is the cinematographic style of David Fincher. The shot that we got of, like we were talking about earlier, like Ripley having the alien come up close to her and hiss, like, is so iconic and such an amazing shot. And there's so many good spots in this movie where we're seeing beautifully lit, undertones with like all the lead and all the like the fear of the monster. Even the fisheye effect where the alien is chasing them down is at least an interesting way of representing the alien's movement. Like, I think that's cool. I think it's also kind of similar to like what Predator did, but you know what? Great artists steal, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I think all of those are good things going on there, but I don't think this movie has a strong thesis about what it is representing in the state of the world. And the alien setting has such an interesting environment. Like I said, the first two movies are kind of railing against capitalism in general, where it's like, oh yeah, the first one, we're truckers in space and we came across a distress beacon that might be like fiscally rewarding to our bosses, and so the robot decides to kill us all. Like, that's what happens in that movie. Like,
Yeah.
the second one is very explicit that the company is bad and that they do not care about the people, that everyone there is cannon fodder, that even the reason the alien outbreak occurred is because the company sent a person off to go look into the site that Ripley told them about. And that it just is like all about like making that money. And the economy of this future is fascinating to me because it does feel like people really hating the Reagan era that we had come into at that point. I mean, obviously the first one came out before Reagan was elected, but like that's that US capitalist world that we were seeing. And this movie has moved on from that point. Like, it doesn't feel as like put upon by that all.
Yeah.
And, like, you see that because there was a draft where apparently they were going to find a Russian space station at some point that was like all being held up as a communist thing, and because the Berlin Wall fell, they were like, oh, I guess we're not doing that anymore.
I mean, I think if this movie was made now, it probably would be a statement on the prison industrial complex.
Well, I can't get over that isn't part of it. Like, the fact that they're just there as prisoners and not being made like forced labor or something for the Weyland-Yutani Company is so mind-blowing to me today.
Yeah, it is weird too, because they make a point of saying at the very beginning, they put a caption on or whatever that it's a mining operation. Right. So they used to really profit off of this thing. But then at some point they say that like there used to be like way more prisoners, obviously. And now there's just like 25 or whatever who just like chose to stay.
Right.
But I'm like, why are they still getting resupplied? Like, they say they get new supply ships every 6 months. And it's like, well, are you still mining? Like, are you still providing the company enough income to justify that?
It's just a UBI.
Right.
Maybe the company's not so bad. It offers
solidarity.
I mean, look at that.
I would take that scenario also. I would take one where like they've thrown down their tools and they are just like living in a space that used to be a work thing. I would take that just fine. But
yeah, they joined the Yang Gang. They're Yang Gang.
Weyland Yang-Tani.
Yeah.
No, but like honestly, like if it were that they had decided to stay because they made the best of this colony and like that was them breaking away from, the realities, and going back would be too difficult because they are murderers of women and rapers of women, which they keep telling us over and over. And then like, I don't know, there would have been something about it, like, but they're not. They just hang out.
Yeah.
And they've got a pretty decent mess hall too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. You're right. No point of view.
Yeah. And that is this movie. Like, this movie is one of my archetypal examples of what I call third movie syndrome, where the third movie after a successful second movie is like, well, fuck, what are we going to do? Let's just do the exact same thing as the first movie. Like, that's like, again, this is one of my archetypal examples, but Return of the Jedi has so many elements that rip off Star Wars, the Death Star going on right there. Highlander 3 is basically a remake of Highlander 1 after whatever Highlander 2 is. We'll talk about that next time. But like you see this all the time in movies, especially as trilogies kind of became the norm in Hollywood, where first movie comes out, it is successful enough to merit a sequel. Second movie comes out, they do something that deviates, and either it's a success or it's a failure, but either way, it doesn't carve out a path forward that is identifiable to audiences who are more familiar with the franchise starting from the first movie. And so the decision is made to get back to basics, quote unquote, with the third movie and reset the stakes and play it out in a similar way. Even things like Planet of the Apes does that, where all of a sudden the only different, like, the third Planet of the Apes movie is the one where the apes time travel back in time and live as celebrities in the 70s. But you know what? That feels a hell of a lot more like the first one than the second one.
I've never seen that. What?
Escape the Planet of the
Is
Apes?
that
It's
true?
great.
Mhm.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great. It's probably, not counting the circus movies because I love the new ones so much, but of the original series, it's probably my second favorite.
Wow.
And Ricardo Montalban's in it.
Yes.
Whoa.
It is.
Way to
As a-
class it up.
Yeah, as a friendly circus trainer who gives them, who provides them safety when they go on the run because they decide they don't want to be medically experimented on by the U.S. government.
Wow. Okay, I gotta watch this.
This then leads into Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is the fourth one, where their child becomes Caesar, who rises up and leads the ape revolution.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a wild series. And then there's Battle, which is just terrible. It's just terrible. But yeah, so like I'm just saying that like movies tend to follow this path. And if you look at third movies in series, like there's oftentimes the need to like, okay, we have to reinforce the things from the first one because that's where the franchise started. And I think that this movie suffers because no one fucking cared about Alien when it came out. It was not a big success. It like made its money back and was known as a good Ridley Scott movie, but it didn't deserve a sequel from the standpoint of money. Studios were not itching to make a second Alien movie, and James Cameron really fought for it after the success of Terminator. He was like, I have a great idea, and I want to do this thing, and everyone was like, I don't believe you, but you can make good movies on really low budgets. And like that's one of the strong points of the Alien franchise up till this point. Neither Alien nor Aliens were particularly expensive movies. This one is a more expensive movie than those, which, you know, we know why it didn't work. They couldn't get their shit together even while they were filming. But this is a movie that was like, all right, well, let's reset the clock to the first movie, and the circumstances are so similar. Like it's one alien, it's her. They don't actually have weapons. Like the first movie, they have like little flamethrowers, but they don't have guns or anything like that. They're dealing with the same sort of like, we don't have all this information. We're in like an enclosed space, yada, yada, yada. It plays out the same beats. And if you were coming into the franchise with Aliens because that was the big successful movie that like proved that this was a franchise to be made, this would feel like a very different movie and not a satisfactory conclusion to the military thriller that we had just witnessed. But I also don't want to just shit on this movie, and I've said some nice things about it. I will say again, it looks really nice. There's some great actors. It is a functionally good movie, and it is so much better than any of the sequels that came after it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't know, and I will never know. Do not suggest one of those.
I'm not going to suggest any of them. Alien Resurrection, the one that came after this one, is better known as the Joss Whedon Alien movie, and
yeah, that's right. Oh my God, I remember that one now.
yeah, where they clone Ripley so that they can then, from her cloned womb, take out the alien that was inside of her cloned blood, because that's how cloning works.
What?
Yeah. And so Ripley comes back as
shut the front door.
generation.
That is not what happened.
Yeah. Oh, it gets even weirder. So then there's a very Joss Whedon crew of like misfits that like she links up with. They fight them all, and then an alien gives live birth, and that has like this like half human, half alien kind of physiology to it. Like it has like a skull face.
That's right.
That she actually kisses at one point. And there's like all this mishigas. It's there are interesting shots in that movie, just like every other movie in the series, but it is not a good one.
Did you say skull face?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm completely traumatized by everything you just said. So okay, we can move on now.
Oh, it's rough. It's rough.
I mean, I think for me the trauma begins when I hear the words Joss and Whedon. I mean, like that's enough for me, because now I'm remembering, you know, people making lots of little comments of like, well, that's a little on the nose, you know, like all of their little like we're so quirky and self-referential and that stuff that he likes to do.
Yeah, that was the movie where I was like, oh, I see the gaps or like I see the holes starting to form in his rep. Yeah,
Wow.
I was on that train long ago.
Yeah.
But then you get Prometheus, which I fucking hate. I know that there are people who like it. There's interesting shots in that movie, but it is such a weird, convoluted mess. It has a cool thing going on with Michael Fassbender as one of the robots, just like hanging out by himself on a ship.
Yes.
That was really cool. We could have done that with Bishop in this movie.
That's true. But yeah, no, Fassbender's performance in that is really fantastic, I think. But yeah, that's the one selling point of that.
Yeah, it's such a weird mess. The concepts of like, what do you do when you go to an alien planet in terms of like, do you remove your mask as soon as you come across oxygen? Sure, fuck it. Like,
right.
None of these are things that make sense. And what's frustrating is that it's a Ridley Scott movie, and the first one is the only one that actually dealt with like, oh no, we're supposed to quarantine. We're not supposed to like directly interact with an alien life form if we can help it. We honestly don't know anything about it. Who the fuck can say if this will be a terrible disease? Because like, what if that was just the alien? Like, it was just they got a plague, and then everyone just died of plague.
Yeah,
because that could have just as easily happened. In fact, more logically than
right.
Oh well, Kane is going to have a small creature burst out of his chest, and it's going to eat you all. And then the Alien vs Predator movies. Like, I don't even know where to start on those ones. It's revealed that the Predators actually created Earth as a hunting ground, that they had pyramids that would be their control mechanism for preventing the aliens from overrunning us. But aliens have always been on Earth, and that the Predators just come to big game hunt them at times for some reason. And then the second Alien vs Predator movie, there was the Predalien, where a predator was infected by an alien, and that created like a super strong one, big like giant alien that could cloak.
Whoa, okay, I didn't see that one. That's bananas.
Technically better than the first Alien vs Predator.
I just remember the one that has Adrian Brody in it.
Predators.
Yeah, I guess. But aren't there aliens in that one too? Or is that just... No, that's just them.
Predators.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the Robert Rodriguez Predator movie.
Right.
Yeah. Weird franchise that got weirdly it's so Predator 2 has like the Easter egg shot when you see the Predator ship, and like it's all these different types of skulls that's collected, and one of those skulls is clearly the xenomorph from the Aliens movies. And that just led everyone to be like, well, obviously we're gonna have a crossover at some point, and that just intertwined their franchise forever. Like, there are so many Alien vs Predator video games, there's so many Alien vs Predator comics. Like, those two pop culture things have just are just permanently intertwined. And then what's the most recent one? Alien Covenant, I think, was the most recent Alien movie, which is, I think, supposed to be more of like an Aliens style military fights the alien thing, which I didn't watch because it didn't look very good. Because everyone, again, my favorite movie in the franchise is Alien, and I think Aliens is the second best, which means that every Alien movie has been worse than the one before it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Ugh.
I promise that unless it's for this podcast, I will not be watching any of those movies. So I feel safe.
Well, you know who should feel safe? The listeners at home, as we segue into pitches. But before that, we should drop an ad for one of the great shows on our network.
Oh, you guys are going to love this.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
Immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds.
Blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun, whatever fun is to you.
I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there. So we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Jeff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
And we're back. All right, so I have a well-established I'm not allowed to go before Sam rule going on here.
Mm-hmm.
That said, my primary pitch is just go watch the assembly cut. I don't know how we're going to get into this conversation much deeper because, oh my God, every step of the way for this movie is a train wreck. Like, there's no like, oh, if I came in as a producer at X point, I could fix it, because I don't actually think that could happen. The studio all of a sudden saw dollar signs after Aliens and wanted to make a successful movie and greenlit it with a decent amount of money, hired great screenwriters to write screenplays that they then threw away. Like, William Gibson wrote a screenplay that they just had to throw out because it took forever to get it together and it had the communist stuff. Like, we had multiple multiple scripts that they were like, yeah, we'll work with this, we'll deal with this. They had different directors hired on. Every single thing, people got fired, studio notes went crazy. Like if you say like, hey, I'm going to come in and work with David Fincher had like one of the worst filming experiences possible. He had no prep time. He had a script that was not finished. He had special effects that were half done and had to make a movie out of it. I don't know where this goes. And I have a couple thoughts, but I'm curious, Erin, where would you go if you were working on this?
Oh God. Well, I mean, I think you really addressed the biggest point, which is just like how many different directions this was going in at different stages in pre-production. And so I think it just all really depends on like at what point you get involved and like what you have in front of you to work with, because that clearly changed so many times. I think to me, the biggest thing would be once you establish that it's this prison planet, right? And that you get rid of the wooden spaceship thing, which is so bananas to me because like, how do you make a space-worthy vessel out of wood?
I have so many questions. Apparently there's a really cool library, but there's like metal on the outside and they're all like Luddites who are afraid of technology.
Huh. Wow. That's that, like, how do they anyway, that I have a bajillion questions about how that would have worked.
Spaceships require maintenance. Someone has to be okay with technology.
And like piloting occasionally. I mean, even if you have AI and stuff, you have to have somebody who at least understands if it starts to anyway. Once you commit to this thing of like it's a prison planet and there's this religious component, right? Like that to me would have to be the whole focus. That could have been such a huge new, especially like when you're talking about how the movie doesn't really address capitalism and the oppression of capitalism, because the option could have been, well, the capitalism isn't functioning as much here anymore because the company isn't making that much money off of these guys anymore. But now the oppression of capitalism has been replaced by the oppression of fundamentalist religion, which I think would have been a really interesting and kind of logical way to go if you had chosen to go this way. And then, having Ripley come in is like becomes like a classic Messiah story. I mean, she literally ends in a crucifix position, right? And if there could have been all kinds of stuff, there could have been all kinds of like legends that had developed about a savior coming. I just feel like that could have been really cool and would have been different from the prior two.
I could see that working.
Yeah, you could make it. I mean, it's kind of on my brain right now because the movie is coming out next week, but it could be like a Dune kind of situation with like
right,
and maybe it's a send up of messiahs, like the way that the series is saying that these are not good things. Like deal with that sort of like religious iconography and all these characters who put their faith in Ripley, and maybe that's the last thing she wants because she has so much survivor's guilt at this point. And actually, that would be really crazy if they do really see her as a messiah and then she dies at the end to prevent them from all dying from an alien.
Right.
Like that could be a really cool kind of like vibe.
Well, and then from what you were saying earlier about how the one guy sort of starts to worship the xenomorph.
Yeah.
So like that could be really cool too if you have an offshoot of the prison population who decide, no, we don't want to fight this thing. Like this is an angel, or this is like this was sent from space, and it's a mystery, and it's like one of God's miracles. And if we need to be sacrificed to it, then we, and like, then there could be internal conflict among the prisoners of like, no, you can't hurt this thing. Like that would be interesting. What do I know?
Yeah.
Just a person sitting here.
No, I think that works really well because again, that is a thing that the movie suffers from removing that element from it. Like we still get a little bit of it with Gaelic, but like it would be even cooler if they like really played it up. And like there are some of those scenes, like he lets out the alien once they capture it at first, and that's why it's like back around for the third act killing everyone. So like lean into that and don't cut those scenes. Like all of that would be great, but then like actually like have more scenes, have other characters like get into it.
Yeah.
Wow, he releases it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
It's not in the theatrical. It's only in the director or the assembly cut. But again, while it's not the cut that made the movie, it is the scenes that they shot assuming to inform how these things went. So
Right.
like some things only make sense if you understand that there was a scene cut where that character died, or
Right.
in this case, that's how he died. He opened up the vault that they had locked the alien in to worship it, and the alien just murders him immediately.
That would have been awesome. Like, I mean, that would have really added something to the movie.
Yeah. But if he had more people, like if there were more people than just 25 prisoners, and you actually saw big divisions in here, that could be really cool.
Yeah. Well, especially because once their original leadership is killed off, like once the warden is killed off, and they have like 30 seconds of being like, well, who's in charge? And then they just sort of figure it out really quick. And it's like, they're like, oh, well, Ripley should be in charge. And then it's sort of like her and Charles Dutton, and like, that's it. And there's just like, nobody has any problem with that. But I'm like, this is a prison planet. And if you've been basing your whole worldview and your whole society on like a monotheistic religion, and then you see the guy who's in charge, right, the head of the whole thing, he gets murdered, like it'd be chaos. Like there'd be all kinds of people jockeying for position, or so yeah, I feel like that would have lent itself to kind of different factions forming about what this thing is and what it means for us.
Yeah, the fact that there wasn't a power struggle at that moment was one of the most unrealistic things in a movie about a space alien.
And about a bunch of prisoners.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to imagine if, like, there'd been an episode of Oz where, like, like they kill the warden, and everybody's just like, all right, chill. Like, Chris Maloney's in charge.
And then they all are. They're just like, no, I'll go back to my cell. It's fine. Yeah.
Right.
It's like, no, after you.
Yep.
No, after you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very pleasant.
Sam, do you want to take a swing?
Sure. Keep in mind, I watched Aliens, so I have more of a problem with this film. So, I would, I feel like this film is really lacking in the first half. And again, I did not watch the assembly cut, so I do not know what was put in extra to create characters and connections. And from what I saw in the theatrical release, there's like, somehow this film didn't find time to introduce me to characters, but still managed to feel what felt like nothing in the first half. And that was ultimately very frustrating to someone watching this.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, okay, all right. And I think also, again, in the very beginning, and granted, right, this is coming off of the huge success of Aliens, and it has been a few years, but people know what the aliens look like. But I still think that this movie introduces its new alien a little too soon in full view. And Case and I have talked about this before, whether it's with Godzilla or even with some other films. We both prefer you to hide your monster a little bit. Like let us get glimpses, little sneaks. It honestly, from a person who's very afraid, it freaks me the fuck out. So please do not show me the whole thing, because you will get me jumping, which will scare everyone in the row because I jumped really high. So it's part of the show. It's like, was that 4D or when you go to the movie theater?
And the seat like shakes you.
I'm there to shake your seat. You don't even have to pay extra. So what I would do is I'm going to accept the fact that the family is dead. Fine. Okay, fine. I accept. I don't like it, but I accept it. But I need off the top, even though Ripley is showing some amazing strength, I still need her. I need a little more of the survivor's guilt theme coming through. And I actually think that this would actually be kind of a nice way for her to connect with the doc, and for him to have more of a fleshed out survivor guilt, kind of, not necessarily like I did this horrible thing by giving wrong meds, but him surviving a tragedy where like his skills weren't enough. So I'm changing his backstory just a little bit. And that way they connect on a survivor's guilt kind of level, where they kind of understand what it's like to feel like you don't know if you can ever really live life again because you've just experienced so much loss and you feel like maybe it's partially your fault, or that there was more that you should have been able to do to make it not happen. Ridley could feel like she should have checked the ship. She shouldn't have thought like, yes, we can go to sleep. Yes, we've escaped. Yes, I've done it. She put everyone in their cryo chambers, but they didn't do that final sweep. And what was so amazing and what was so great about Aliens is they really give you some time, not a huge chunk of the movie, but it gives you some time to really deal with the trauma that Ripley is feeling. And in this movie, although yes, she does have a moment where she touches, her child's face, but she immediately goes into search mode. She immediately goes into like, what is happening with this child, and is there something inside of her? And I understand that seems natural to me, but I feel like there needed to be other scenes where we get a little bit of the survivor guilt. So I think if he has not the same story, but a similar kind of experience, and we have them connect over that right away, then that to me makes them falling into bed together, falling into comfort together, make a little more sense, and have that come a little sooner. Have their talks and kind of that stuff come a little sooner. Amp up all of the religious zealot stuff. Have it when Ridley is walking down the alleyways, people turning from her and like whispering to themselves into their hands, or nodding fast at the walls, which is very like, can be very creepy, right? Because you're walking past someone and they turn away from you and they're just start mumbling something and rocking. That's horrifying. I know, I ride the subway all the time. And so, so, you have that happen. Have the structures, have there already be a little bit of a schism. Let's make this like politically religious. Let's make this have some people really already be following the main zealot and have them be following Dilton, where there's another fraction that's a little more calm, more level-headed, and have that kind of, so there's a dynamic that she's coming into, and that way the threat doesn't have to necessarily be to her body, but can be to the fact that she's coming into a heavily politically charged area. Like this is basically an environment where these men are already, they've created a structure, and she just by being an outsider is a threat to this. And then I do like, so I'm going to steal it, I do like the break-off sect that thinks that, and I'm going to make them nihilistic. They've been on this rock too long.
Yeah.
And they think that this transformation into alien is actually a salvation. It's a freedom. They're transforming into their regular human bodies into something better, to something greater, into a predator that really understands. It's a new life. It's a new... and kind of have them go with that. And that way you've got kind of what you had with the first robot, right? Where you have something actively, some people actively working against your better interest. And it's because they believe that the bad things that they did, this is not just a punishment. This is a reward. This is a reward for their time here. And they're going to transform into something more holy, something better, which sends them off the deep end. And I love when villains go off the deep end. It's one of my favorite things. I love it, especially when they think it's because they're doing it for something better, greater than themselves. It's my favorite. Take it up to an 11 with that. And then keep 86 as naive as possible, still calling the company. He wants to get out because this is all fractioned now, right? There's Dilton with his more level-headed religious guys who are just trying to do the right thing, and they're just like, no, this she's fucking right. Like, she's here to save us. We need to like follow her and listen to her and do what she's telling her. Then you've got the alien worshippers who are like, nah, man, I'm gonna be one of these guys. Like, I'm gonna like that dog fucking morphed into fucking. I can't believe I'm keeping the dog thing. That dog morphed into something amazing, and now nothing can ever hurt it. And I want to be like that. I'm going to morph into something like that. The alien is going to enter me and something better is going to emerge and like actually create accolades. And then you've basically, and I would keep the doc alive for longer, only because that is our biggest connection and it's her biggest human connection. But I would still have him die in an almost similar manner. And I would have him try to shield her and still keep that scene with puppets, practical effects, gooey puppets, love it. And because that's iconic and I wouldn't get rid of that at all. I'm fine with the maze down there. I would like a little bit more texture to the furnace area in terms of the set design. Like I would like a little more, I don't know, pipes on the wall. It felt very like too clean to me. I didn't really feel like there would be like heat, and therefore adding some like steam scenes, which I think would help also because it would obscure the monsters a little bit, and take care of some of that quick CGI issuing that you have. And I would still leave the end the same. I would still leave it where the company comes, they can take care of the accolades, the alien accolades, just shoot them right on site. Like, I don't give a shit about you guys. And then just come in because their primary source is just either get this monster or get Ripley because she's got one of them inside, right? That's it. So they don't really care about anyone else in this space, and just have them kind of go through and get rid of the people that they need to get rid of and still have her have that showdown, because she's right. Trusting a man has never worked for her. So this is the right choice to jump into that vat and to basically make this sacrifice now that she's killed the monster. And that's what I would do with it. I'd fix the first half and leave the second half. Add some steam.
Yeah. Well, and when you're talking about like adding the pipes and stuff, I mean, I think that's one of the, when the alien movies are really good, I think that's one of the strengths of the monster, right? Is that it has these parts because the H.R. Geiger design is, it's like very industrial. It's like very machine-like. It's very like metallic, and like, you know, there are all these great moments at different points in the franchise where you're like going through tunnels that are full of pipes and stuff. And actually you're looking at the xenomorph and you don't realize until it moves, right? Because it looks, it like blends into the machinery. And I feel like that's always a strength of it, is feeling like this is like so far from being what we associate with like an organic creature.
Yeah. There's just not enough, like you're near a furnace. There needs to be steam. There needs to be showing of heat. We need to like, and I just felt like the walls needed to be more textured than they were. Like some shots of the ceiling were there, and definitely when she was like climbing up at one point, like trying to trap him, there was texture on that wall because she needed to climb it. But I just felt like it was very smooth and very bright, and not enough. There wasn't enough mystery for this love story for me, and I just didn't love it. You know, like one of the scenes that I really loved in Aliens was when the kid falls through that gear and ends up down inside of the water, and they're trying to cut through, and then you just see that doll head, like, 'cause it's just murky water, and that's great because you don't actually even need to put any practical, I mean, you know, I like my gooey puppets, but you don't have to do any puppets or anything for you to get a full sense of like the dread there, right? Because there's dark corners, there's water, there's all sorts of things. There's just not enough dark corners in this. I appreciated it because I was not scared, and I hate being scared. But also, I think that it's a flaw in this film.
Yeah, like, it's hard not to compare this movie with the first one, because the first one has such similar, like, story beats to it all. But that one of the crazy parts about the setting of the first movie is that there's all these really, like, rich shadows that the alien hides in, you know? Like, some of those scares are just, like, so legitimately earned, where, like, your eye is called to the wrong thing. And it's like such wonderful sleight of hand that when all of a sudden you realize, no, I should be looking at this, all of a sudden the monster's there. And like, that's it. And you're done. So yeah, I agree that it would be really nice to like add more to it. I think some of it, I think they actually had started working on the wood sets. Like I had to like hastily change it back.
Oh no.
I'm not clear on that one. I listened to a bunch
Yeah.
of interviews today, and so like some people were being like, "Oh yeah, we were already working on it for like the wood satellite kind of thing," and then had to like make it into a prison world instead.
Oh
So
my
that might
God.
contribute a little bit to it. But yeah,
Let's just add some texture to this wood wall and make it look metal. Yeah, sounds
and
good.
almost all metal sets in things are probably just wood flats that have been spray painted.
Right.
So
Right.
So who cares? Like, just yeah, you can make it crazier. But I also understand crazy production schedule. So who knows what they were able to do, or what they even knew that they were shooting the next day? Because
Right.
I agree. I think that the last half of the movie is, for the most part, fine. You know, I think that it would be nice to have more players involved in this and to have more distinct individuals in it all. But like the ultimate confrontation of defeating this last alien and Ripley sacrificing herself, I think I want to keep that no matter what. So it's really kind of a question of like, all right, so what is this movie missing? And I think looking at the first movie and comparing it to this one, there's just so much more stuff to look at in the first movie. Like, it's this crazy big alien ship or not alien, pardon me, this crazy big like industrial ship that they're on, this like again like space truck drivers situation. We've got cool stuff with the cryopods. We have them find an alien world, find an alien ship, find a dead alien pilot for that ship, find all these eggs, have them like exploring in spacesuits, then we get the alien introduced. Versus this movie where the alien, I mean, sure, it's 3 movies in, we know what the aliens we know what their game is, but there isn't a lot to really look at in this movie. Like, it's all the same, you know, this like prison set piece up until the alien arrives, and then all of a sudden it's now like, okay, now we're running through the tunnels of this prison set piece, but there isn't a lot of like visually distinct things. And I realize that we're kind of limited on locations if we're going to have it on a prison world, but it's still weird that there just isn't anything to look at. It's just shit brown the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find that a bit of a bummer. So I kind of think that I would like to have the prison planet. So I think we're all agreed, more prisoners. Like, just have more people so that we can have, you know, other factions. We can have like a little bit more conventional unrest in a prison scene. Like, we can do prison drama stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that would help a lot. So have more prisoners. My thought is that this should be more of like a work camp for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, and like actually like emphasize that. And maybe they've found this weird religion kind of component to it all. But I feel like this is the end point where we need to really articulate that the Weyland-Yutani Corporation is the problem in this series, because the aliens were just out there, and that like it was as directed by the company, they interacted with the aliens in the first place, and then as directed by the company, they had to interact with them again. And I really want to emphasize that like this company is the thing that's fucking everything up.
Right.
That their profit goals of finding an alien species, that's a problem. So come face to face with just like the gritty, darkest element of this sort of like space capitalism, where we have whole planets where people are sent off to be labor forces in terrible conditions for crimes that, like, yeah, sure, some of them can be rapists, but, you know, maybe have some people who are like, I really didn't do anything, or like nothing that was major, and I am here for the rest of my life,
Or falsely accused, or, you know, but yeah, falsely convicted.
yeah, and have some characters who are like that. And then, you know, like, we can play up the religious sects kind of thing to sort of give visual indications of who's whom. Sure, the lice thing, everyone's bald, fine, keep that. It, like, for Ripley, it makes a ton of sense. She looks so distinct compared to any other movie, like, and we get again some amazing shots with her just looking very different, and kind of asexual in the sort of like divine kind of component, if we're going to talk about like the messianic figure. I think that's all very good, but, you know, maybe we have like more of a religious sect that's like all into self-flagellations, as we mentioned before, and referenced Name of the Rose. Like, that's a big part there. And like, maybe have them like not wear shirts and have like scars all over their body. Like, that could be really cool. Have maybe have particular colors that they wear. And then I think that it should be more interesting than just like a lead smelting plant. And this is where you could get something visually interesting. I don't know necessarily what exactly, but if we could have something that was either blue or green, just to have a different color palette in there aside from just like orange brown, like
Gems.
Maybe not gems, but maybe like some kind of like fusion reactors or something like that. I don't know exactly, but like have something that emanates a light that is a different color than what the rest of this movie is. Because oh my god,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's sort of an oppressively monochromatic color palette. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really agree with what you're saying about highlighting Weyland-Yutani as the real big boss, right? The real big boss villain. And I think we've all kind of said variations of this, but I think the movies are always stronger when there's a human antagonist or a cyborg antagonist, in addition to, because the xenomorphs are just animals, right? They're just trying to survive. They're not like sentient. They don't have a plan.
Or even if they do, because it is remarked on how smart they are, but they're different. And like, they're certainly, we entered their space.
Right. And they're, I guess when I say they're not sentient, they don't have a plan besides survival and propagation of their species, right? Like they don't have like they don't have a bank account that they're trying to beef up.
They're not trying to profit off of all the lives that they're taking.
Yeah, they're
like someone.
Right. Well, they're more just acting on instinct, and it's like they're just an invasive species, and we cannot cohabitate with them. But like to me, it's scarier when it's supported by a person or people or cyborgs or company that are like, no, we want this to happen. Like we want these guys to win in this section of population because we'll profit off of it.
Right.
We don't care about lives. We understand what they're taking, and we're okay with it.
Yeah. So I feel like I want to bring in Weyland-Yutani a little bit earlier than we get them in this movie. So that's probably the one big change I would have in that regard. The other thing, so again, first Alien, when we find out that there's that there are androids, period, in this world, it's a big scene. It's a big, crazy visual scene that happens. We don't have any big paradigm shift occur in this movie. Like the alien shows up, and once the alien is there, everyone's on the run, and it's the same exact thing until we end the movie. So I think things like, I know that Sigourney Weaver didn't want gunplay in this movie, and she was a big enough star by the time we got to this movie that her word actually was able to like sort of set that tone. I don't think that means that we shouldn't necessarily have guns at the prison planet. Like, I think what they should be is that they should be inaccessible because aliens are going to be blocking the path, and that maybe the only way to get in there anyway would be a key that was on the now dead warden's body. And I think that could be some first half of Act 2 kind of adventures of them trying to get the tools to fight the aliens, failing, so that we have something going on, and maybe that takes us to a different part of the prison than what we're at normally.
Yeah, or the guns are contraband and they're entirely in the possession of like a faction that we hate, but now we have to deal with them to get them on board so that we have weapons or something.
Yeah, because like imagine like some kind of doomsday cult here having like ritualistic like fire and blood and like all this kind of like interesting iconography at least going on to set them apart from the other groups that are here. Like, we could have some really fucking cool stuff, and maybe they're the ones who get a hold of the guns. They've stolen all the guns, or maybe they just have all the shivs. Whatever. Like, we can we can play prison jokes if we want.
I mean, I'm okay with there not being guns, but I wish that there were more pointy things. Like, I wish that there was like throwing knives or something fun. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not asking for ninja stars, like I'm not doing that. But I'm asking for and I would have liked to see them get like a little creative with some stuff. These are people who would probably have to be creative, especially if we're going with the original script and they have decided to stay behind on this planet for gosh knows what reason. So I would like to see one of them use something that one of the aliens left behind, or one of the little, my favorite puppets, the little mouth eating ones. I don't even know.
Face huggers.
The face huggers. That makes so much sense. Look at me renaming things that make more sense with their actual names.
The mouth eating ones.
The mouth. I mean, you're not wrong.
It happens. So anyway, they climb onto the face, right? Like, they have little pointy, finger things. Like, what if you, broke those off and, created, a rake-like thing on a stick, Or, I don't know. It would have just been really cool to be you have one guy, he's been in prison forever. like maybe his thing is that he creates art out of found objects. Like he's a weirdo and he creates art out of found objects. And like this comes in handy, right? This throwaway shit comes in handy later on because he starts taking parts of discarded aliens and piecing them together and creating these fucking weapons. And that's what they're using to kind of like fight back. Because let's be honest, like these aliens possibly fight each other. So why would they not fucking use the parts? That would be so cool. Like you don't need guns to have cool weapons. Like you can create things.
Right.
And they could have found ways to kind of like create things and make things. I mean, these are potentially, even though we don't have any proof, violent, murderous people. Why can't, like, if you roll up a piece of paper, a thick piece, like if you roll up a magazine in a certain way and you swing it at someone, you can cut a person. That is a fact.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about how you can like wet it and then like layer it down until eventually it's a stabbing implement.
Oh, you can do that too. But what I'm saying is just a magazine near you, you can roll it up and in a certain way, you can use that to actually cut someone. These people would know that. I mean, I know that. These people would know that. They're murderers. They keep telling us that. They are murderers and rapers of women. They say it like 10 times. Yep. If there was a drinking game, I'd be drunk by the middle of the movie. And so the fact that they don't know these things and they don't like ever like they're just not badass, and they should be bad. They should be like the Marines. They should be like the Marines from the last movie without the guns, because they're more badass. Like, what the fuck? Like, they're just not cool. They're not cool. It's very frustrating to me. And I think that it's okay for them not to have guns. It is okay for us to decide that we do not want to add on to gun violence on screen if I'm Sigourney Weaver. Well, I don't want to hold the gun. I don't want to shoot the gun. Fine. But we need weapons. Something.
Yeah. Some kind
and
of...
we need to see weapons.
I think that, like, I'm not trying to say, like, the gun is the answer, because it's not an answer at any point in the series, but it should be a false glimmer of hope for them at some point. And I think it's okay to, like, explore that as at least as being like, oh, yeah, well, it is for the prison guards, but that's right smack in terms of where all the people we found have died.
I will give you your guns, and I will give you 0 ammo.
Well, what I'm saying is that they can't even access the guns, like, because it's completely cut
I think they should be able to, and then realize they have no ammo. And it is just not even helpful.
I mean, that could also be fun. It could be like a Snowpiercer kind of situation where, like, their guns are being bandied about to, like, keep the prison population in check. And actually, they've run out of bullets a while ago, and they've just been afraid of anyone ever, like, testing it because now they're fucked. So maybe that could be kind of a part of it. I just think that we need more going on in the first half of the movie to get to the point where once they're all kind of on the run, the alien is the true threat. And then maybe more closely to, like, the break into 3 is when, like, the Weyland-Yutani people show up initially, and you think, okay, well, now they have it under control. They have Marines. But because they're so dedicated to not killing either the alien or Ripley, like, a bunch of the guards can die. And then, or soldiers or whomever they send. And then that becomes the area where it's then a confrontation that we get more time between this proto-Bishop character with Ripley actually talking. And again, just to sort of reemphasize that, like, no, Weyland-Yutani is the company that has fucked over your life. Like, the alien is this terrible monster from the darkness, this, Cthulhu-esque kind of thing that you peered into the darkness, but they're the ones who, like, put you out into the shadows and then pulled your eyelids open so you had to see it. Like, that's the element there that we need to be playing with, because that's been the through line up until this point. And this movie, like, continues it from momentum, but I don't think it does anything to advance that component.
Yeah, agreed. It's I think it's even beyond, like, they pushed you into the darkness and held your eyelids open, though that's a phenomenal image, and I think that's entirely true. But it's like they will also choose the darkness over you every time. They will keep reaching out there with no regard for you whatsoever.
Now, then the other thing, because I realize that audiences were turned off by, like, the main characters from the previous movie all being dead, I would probably keep Hicks alive. I would see... So the challenge with Newt is that, like, the most logical way to do it, you can either recast her, or you can have her be a little bit older and say that she was not in her pod. But if she's not in her pod, then did she witness the aliens impregnate everyone? Like, how did that all play out? I don't know. I really don't know. from the movie that we had how I would rate that.
The other thing that I kind of toyed with was like, you kind of don't do this right after, and you let there be a time jump, and then the focus is her as a 17-year-old and her mom going to a new space, and surprise, surprise, aliens. I mean, like, that's the other option, is that you let them have 17 years of happiness. But that would be too much, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be too much. Erin, it looks like you're about to say something.
Yeah, well, because I almost forgot to ask this before, but does the assembly cut address how she got the queen inside of her? Because her pod was not
cracked.
Yeah, it wasn't cracked or anything. So did that? It must have happened before.
I think it did. It's because it's all in that like weird flashbacky kind of stuff at the beginning.
Right.
Isn't it?
That is actually the roughest part, which is explaining how the alien even winds up on their like pod is a difficult thing, because it's like, well, it was a queen who theoretically left her like egg-laying abdomen when she like severed herself to like chase after Ripley. So I don't think she just had like eggs that were like dribbling out as she like walked.
Right.
Which is such a visual. Now that I say that out loud. It's
eggs dribbling out. I hate when I have eggs dribbling out.
She was technically giving birth for a very long time, so maybe she just wasn't done. And you know, we don't really understand alien physiology.
No, we don't.
Yeah, I have an easier time accepting that one of them got onto the EEV or whatever it is than I do understanding how it infiltrated Ripley's pod, unless it was already in there before she. Yeah, that's
a good question. I'm not sure. And like, this is a rough area in terms of like making it make sense and having it like the shots work, because like it could get in there.
We need to solve this right now. I'm not leaving until we figure this out. Just kidding. Sorry. Go on.
That's it.
We'll probably be here for forever. This is never ending another past episode where we just like, all right. So what if instead of it being one of the eggs, what if it was just one of the drones, but it had like a face hugger that it was carrying? I don't know.
Get Fincher on the horn. Get him on the horn right now.
Fincher, we want to talk about Alien 3 and immediate click.
Yeah.
We are definitely still on this call, even though it is on your podcast listening thing. Please go into Discord and tell us how this happened. Please go to our Discord.
Yeah, I would actually love if people have fan theories on this one, because like, man, that would be nice. Like the other thing is that like all of the Alien movies from the first one on have made the aliens less mysterious, and so the first one has the weirdest physiology to the point where like we don't understand why it's capturing people and like putting them in like cocoons kind of thing. Like there's all these elements that are like, oh, that doesn't quite match what we see in the second one, because the second one's like, oh, there's a queen and they lay eggs, and one of my problems with the second one is it just makes them bugs as opposed to like something that's truly alien, truly like unknowable in terms of its life cycle. Like nothing makes sense if you just are looking at the first movie. This movie could double down on nothing making sense, but I don't think it does. Like it needs to have something to support that beyond just like, yeah, I was on the ship and somehow now you're pregnant with a queen. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, because like, how fucking gnarly would it be if the main alien of this was inside Newt?
Well, you know, when I was rewatching it, that's what I thought. I couldn't remember, and that's what I thought it was, that they were going to do that.
No, I don't mean like in Newt and when she was like in the pod. I mean like if Newt had actually gotten out and was alive and then died at the beginning of the movie, and like they were fighting the offspring of Newt.
Right. I don't know. I don't know how people would feel about watching a kid get chest bursted.
It was bad enough watching the dog die. I think the kid would be far too far.
It's a rough situation regardless. Like I don't know if I'm necessarily advocating it. I'm just spitballing like, well, because like I understand that like there's a lot of audience members who came away from Aliens, which has like a happy ending, and then were very upset that like most of the characters are dead off screen before the movie starts.
Right, just immediately. Yeah.
I mean, definitely my friend who I watched it with was very this was one of the things she told me. She was like, the beginning of this movie made me very angry. And definitely that is part of her thing because, you know, it was a family, you know, Hicks giving hard eyes and, you know,
Yeah.
Ripley getting a child and, you know, kind of like seemingly there was a parental unit for this abandoned child and a hopeful thing. And she could dream. She can dream again. That's like one of the things said. And it's so lovely. And, you know, Shepard turned out to be a good robot. You
Bishop,
can
yeah.
trust this robot. Unlike other robots, you know, and it was like lovely, you know, and then the first 10 minutes of this movie happened and all of that is not true anymore.
Yep.
Yep.
Crushed.
So it's done and done. And so I think like I think maybe watching an alien pop out of the child's chest might have made people more angry. So if we're going to go with what, I say like leave it the way that it is rather than watch her get destroyed from
Right.
the inside.
I don't know. I'm just saying, like, as a different take from what we've already gotten, if this movie was just like a full splatterhouse type thing and just everyone's
Yeah.
exploding with blood everywhere, like, at least it's a different movie. Just
Yeah.
a retread of the first one.
And the
which was
blood
also
always
bloody.
looks good. I mean, the Fincher blood always looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it could glisten very
Yeah.
well on all
Well,
the
and
walls.
it has like texture. It has like, it isn't just like thin and watery and stuff. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, get some real chunks in
Oh.
there.
yeah.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
I actually did make the joke that out of the three directors, only one of them was a monster because Ridley decided to save the cat and Cameron decided to save the child. But Fincher was like, fuck that dog. And so
Or
Yeah.
cow. Or cow.
or
Right.
cow.
Right.
Fuck that cow.
Right.
Yeah. So
Can I make an observation that really has no place anywhere?
Absolutely.
It's like
Yeah.
completely okay. I just want to point out that after Ripley and the doc bone, he says to her, I appreciate your affections, which I just want to say, gentlemen, that's the hottest thing you can say to a woman post-sex. That's what we call game. Okay. I appreciate your affections. Just store that away in the back of your mind.
yes, please also send a thank you note. That is an Emily post.
Yes.
Direction.
Yes.
You should send a thank you note repeating the same phrase
Yes.
the day after. Please send it by snail mail, though, to really send the point home. That's
Right.
how we will know how appreciated the affections were.
That's
But
proper.
really channel Tywin Lannister
Yeah.
when you do.
Yes. Right.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I mean, is there any other way? I don't think so. I appreciate your affections. Regards.
Yep. Best.
I gotta say though, he is very charming in this movie. Like,
Oh, yeah.
as a good guy, Charles Dance is like, I was so happy to see, and he's
Oh no, I love him. He was lovely, and I loved that they boned.
Yeah.
yeah, and that is the problem of if Hicks survives, like you assume that Hicks and she are a couple, even though they don't
Right.
actually say it at any point. So maybe have him in a coma for a while so that she can go off and like we were on a break, and then
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, this movie, like, again, like on paper, this movie makes so much sense for us to talk about on the show because it clearly was a troubled production that led into a very flawed, you know, interesting movie, but flawed, like very, very flawed. And it's just hard to figure out where it went wrong because it looks like it went wrong every single step of the way. And they got lucky with having a director who has maybe not a strong thesis for what this movie is about, but at least a strong eye for how he wants it to look. And so that makes it a much better movie than it could have been if they got like that, you know, commercial director who they could just pay to like get through the shoot as quickly as possible. Like
Right.
this could have been a much worse movie too, which is the weird part.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, like, and I think we said this before we started recording, I think the fact that you have great actors and Sigourney Weaver there to protect the character of Ripley and just make sure that it doesn't go astray in studio notes and in anything else, as we've seen in some other third movies, you still get a sense of who who her character is, and she is this franchise.
Yeah, and
so that saves this.
totally. And I think also just the supporting cast, like, I don't think there's a single moment when I'm like, I don't believe you as an actor. Like, I don't believe that you really meant what you just said, right? It doesn't always it's not always logical in terms of like, why would someone do this? But I feel like they're really great actors. And in that moment, you're like, well, okay, that's a weird choice, but I believe that that's what you wanted to do for whatever fucking reason.
Like that's not a great line, but you delivered it well.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. Which is hard. Which is really hard when you have like a slightly or extremely incoherent script, right?
Yeah.
Like the only character element that I just don't believe at all is 85 or 86 or whatever they call him.
86.
Okay, yeah.
That's his IQ.
That's the thing. There is no way that guy has a subnormal IQ. I mean, he is like, he's like firing on all cylinders all the time. Like, it's just not, that's not believable at all. They needed somebody a little bit more slack-jawed.
Yeah. I could see that. I think also there were attempts, and I say attempts because they fell flat. There were attempts at humor in the second half of the maze. And those were not pulled off, but they were done fully.
Right.
To the letter of the script.
Yes.
And those actors pretended that they thought that was funny. And I thought those characters have no sense of humor because that is not funny, but they believed it was.
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about. When the two run into each other and like they're like, "Oh, you scared the shit out of me! Ha 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 ha! It's only me." The part that's so they stay there laughing for so long, and it's
and
like
they're so loud.
They're so loud, and they're like they've been the reason they were running so fast is because there's a fucking alien in the tunnels with them. But then they just decide, "Oh, I guess we'll chill here for a hot second."
Yeah, and before that, like maybe a couple shots before that, someone else is running and he runs into a guy and he's running with scissors and he's like, that's not how you run with them. And he turns them around and he's like, you're going to kill someone. And I'm like,
right.
I know that I'm supposed to laugh at this because it's what our mothers tell us and they are running for their lives and it would be a weapon, but it doesn't land. It doesn't stick the landing.
Right.
So I get it. I know what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's just not funny.
It's very difficult to stick the landing when you start a movie without an actual finished script. And I think that's the big thesis of this episode, where it's like, don't make a movie for a release date. Make a movie to finish the movie. And like every interview, every single one is just like all the producers are like, nope, we got this slot is when it's coming out. So we had to make it for this. And you can see how that failed the production at every single step of the way.
I feel like that's too much logic that you're spewing. And I don't like it.
Well, and it also doesn't necessarily serve our capitalist overlords as much, which is, interesting when talking about a franchise that addresses the evils of eventually
capitalist
massive multi-planet monopoly conglomerate, Amazon.
Can we actually? One thing we totally missed, and like we're very close to wrapping up, but I just need to drop this one right here. Wayland Yutani as the corporation is such 80s Japan scare that it's like shocking to look back and be like, oh right, America was fucking terrified of Japan at this time because it was like, oh, they're better at economics than us. Like
yes,
and of course they would have a robot that would turn on us.
Right. Just
saying.
They're better at economics than us and must therefore clearly be as obsessed with military dominance as we are. And that being connected
True story.
To, because everybody has to be, right? Like, that's just...
That's a more complicated one, considering that at that point, there were plenty of people who had fought against the Japanese still alive at that point.
No, that's true. Of course, like that wasn't that wasn't a completely unprompted feeling to have.
It's just so jarring to look at stuff from the 80s where it's just like, oh yeah, we were real fucking terrified because we all of a sudden were being like, oh, aren't we superior? Oh wait, we might not be the best at everything.
Right.
Anyway, I just forgot to mention it earlier, and I just didn't want us to wrap up without pointing out that one.
Without talking about American flaws?
I have a hard time not doing that these days.
It's pretty much relevant to everything, It's hard to get away from it.
At least if you're American.
But we should get away from this movie, because I think we can circle around this particular one a lot. And as much as I enjoy talking about this franchise, I don't have good fixes for this movie. I don't have like key things where I'm like, oh, this is where it went wrong, because it went wrong everywhere. But where it did go wrong was us inviting Erin to come on board, because she is what is it, the head bitch in charge, the phenom.
The total package. Total package. She's everything.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Thank you.
Erin, would you like to share what some of those total package elements are? Your plugs, where people can find you, all the stuff.
Yes. So if you live in or around Los Angeles, you can see me doing stand-up at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, at the Hollywood Comedy in Hollywood, and a variety of other places pretty much all the time. That's the main plug right now.
Social media?
Oh, yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at Erin M. Callahan, M as in multinational corporation, Erin M. Callahan. And you can find me on Instagram at Dingoes Ate My Baby, which is spelled Dingoz, the number 8, MIPABY, because all the Erin Callahan variations were taken.
That's fair.
Dingoes are dangerous. So
Yep.
you're bringing awareness. And
Thank you.
That's a good thing.
Thank you for recognizing that.
People should absolutely go and check out your comedy. If they're local, wonderful. But if not, even just like following your Instagram stories is always a lot of fun. So, so glad to reconnect with you after. Side note: Erin and I were friends in high school, and we have not talked to each other in like 20 years.
It's insane.
Wow.
It's insane.
So wonderful to reconnect with you. In the meantime,
Yeah, likewise.
after they check out your stuff, Another Pass is on Twitter at Another Pass. I am on Twitter at Case Aiken. Sam, where can people find you?
You can find me here on Another Pass and on our Discord server and nowhere else, because I am a figment of a corporation created to make sure that Case produces as much as possible.
But yes, you should head on over to certainpov.com, where you can find all kinds of great podcasts that we're putting out. I'm going to give a shout out to Reignite right now. They are prepping for their 4th season. Now, having finished the Mass Effect trilogy, they're starting their playthrough of Mass Effect Andromeda. So that's really exciting. I can't wait to see what that is in store, mainly because I haven't played that game yet. So we'll see what that one's like. But you can find that at certainpov.com. You can also find links to our Discord server, where you can come interact with us directly. You can get sneak peeks at upcoming episodes. And just chat with us and share memes. It's a lot of fun. We've got a section just for venting about just how awful the world is, which sometimes you just got to do. We also have a section for pets and selfies. So, like, that's also a fun area. So, all kinds of things. You can find all that over at certainpov.com, where you can find more episodes of this show. Sam, what is coming up next on this show?
Next time on Another Pass, we'll be talking about Highlander 2, The Quickening. But until then, if you enjoyed this, pass it on.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe and review the show on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Another Pass is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Sam Alicea and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Matt Storm. Our logo and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our intro theme is by Vin Macri, and our outro theme is by Matt Brogan.
Everyone should absolutely go check out your comedy. It's been great that you've had it up on your Instagram story, so I've been able to actually catch bit. I can't make words right now. Hey, all you amazing sentient beings. This is Case Aiken from Certain POV, and outside of podcasting, I work with a group that does Star Trek fan films called Starship Farragut. For 15 years, we've been doing material inspired by the original Star Trek series. But now we're moving on to the movie era with our latest production, Farragut Forward. And that means new sets, new props, and we're gonna have to make those monster maroon uniforms. So we have a crowdfunder running right now. Backers can get access to our soundtracks, have their names show up on screen as part of a duty roster, or even get a walk-on role. Our hope is that this is just the beginning, and that the assets we create with the money we raise will go towards future productions, including possibly a sequel that may just be written by a certain scruffy, nerf-hurting Man of Steel who'll take another pass at it. Wink, wink. To back the production, go to Indiegogo and look up Farragut Forward, or find us on Twitter at Farragut1921. And hey, while you're at it, check out the 3-minute prologue we put together to show what we can do. But in the meantime, live long and prosper. Wow.
No, you're killing it. You are killing it.
Matt, do not edit this out. Leave it all in.
Or as a blooper.
Or all in.
Or,
up
however.
to you. I trust you.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.